Matthew and Olivia first met completely by chance one winter evening at the ice rink. Olivia rented a pair of skates but struggled to tighten her laces. Her friends had already zipped off onto the ice, leaving her wrestling alone with the stubborn shoelaces. Until Matthew stepped in to help, he gently asked whether the skates felt comfortable if the laces were too tight or not. Olivia was charmed by his caring demeanor that day. They both broke off from their respective friend groups and skated together after that. They barely let go of each other's hands. They'd been married for 5 years now at some point, though the magic, the sheer constant desire to be together every minute, seemed to fade. It was replaced by everyday chores and mutual responsibilities. The initial passion wore off. They lost the rose-tinted glasses and each began to notice the other's flaws. After a series of arguments over all sorts of trivial things, they fell into a lull that sometimes felt more like indifference. Matthew, who'd always recognized his wife's stubborn streak, knew that in their conflicts it would usually be up to him to make the first move toward reconciliation. He didn't mind. He was the calmer one. He also saw how small problems, if left unresolved, could mount up and destroy their marriage, so he kept trying to patch things up with Olivia. Hebedley wanted kids, he had a stable job, a decent salary, and they were living in his own apartment that he'd inherited from family. Olivia also worked, but if she ever lost that income, it wouldn't be catastrophic. They could get by on his salary alone. In other words, everything was in place for them to start a family, except that Olivia just didn't want to. First, she said she wanted more time to herself. Then she told him pregnancy was physically and mentally draining, and she wasn't ready to tackle that yet. Matthew tried to be patient, hoping that at some point she'd decide she was ready. Wanting a baby as much as he did, he'd continuously show that he'd make a great dad and reliable breadwinner. Unfortunately, nothing worked and a tense atmosphere hung over their home. Then, seemingly out of nowhere, Olivia started coming home late from work. Matthew couldn't recall exactly when it began. He only realized at once he was frequently fending for himself with reheated leftovers or takeout. Olivia claimed they'd taken on a lot of new clients at the office, leaving her swamped by the time I iron out all the details and talk to everyone. It's already 8 at night, she said. Matthew hated the situation, but there wasn't much he could do. She loved her job, loved the company. These constant overtime shifts me. Olivia often turned him down for intimacy, claiming she was too exhausted, realizing that might push the possibility of children even further into the future. Matthew tentatively suggested she quit work for a while, rest at home, but she insisted she wasn't interested. She liked working her mixed signals too. Tired to be with him, yet refusing tourist from her job, left him confused and frustrated. Another few months went by in this routine until everything shifted. Again, Olivia stopped coming home late. She clocked out on time, but she was somehow in an even worse mood. Moody, irritable, barely speaking and snapping at him whenever he asked if something was wrong. Matthew tried to keep the peace, tried to make her happy, but it began to feel one-sided. A marriage shouldn't be a solo effort. One evening, they went to a housewarming party for some mutual friends who lived way across town. As they drove through that unfamiliar neighborhood, Matthew noticed Olivia's sudden anxiety. She looked around uneasily, biting her lip. Then, as they got out of the car and walked to the building, something bizarre happened. Something Matthew couldn't begin to understand. They were passing by a row of entrances, searching for the right apartment, when this random woman came rushing up to Olivia, hurling insults and even trying to grab her hair. Matthew quickly intervened, worried this might be some unhinged local. The woman's eyes were wild. "Why are you defending this trash? She ruins families. I have 2 kids. Did that even cross your mind?" the stranger yelled. Matthew told her to back off, grabbed Olivia by the arm and steered her toward the correct entrance. "You okay? What on earth was that?" he asked. "Spring madness." Olivia mumbled, "You know how many unstable people never get treatment?" She shrugged it off like she had no idea what had just happened. But Matthew wasn't convinced. They both got caught up in the housewarming festivities, though, and the confrontation slipped from their immediate attention. But later at home, that scene gnawed at Matthew. Why would some random woman accuse Olivia of destroying a family? It wasn't exactly a typical rant from errandom crazy person. He tried to get Olivia to explain, but she just claimed ignorance, avoiding his eyes and bristling whenever he pressed the issue, sensing that something was definitely being hidden from him. Matthew started digging. He checked her phone, her laptop, but came up empty. Then fate stepped in. One evening, Olivia texted him that he should pick up some groceries on the way home after finishing work. Matthew stopped by a supermarket while browsing the shelves. He spotted a woman who looked oddly familiar. He recognized her from the bizarre incident outside the building, except now she looked like any tired mom. One child. In the shopping cart, a baby in a stroller juggling a million things while the older kid asked about visiting daddy. He realized she didn't look at all crazy, as she had that night. Just overwhelmed, her daughter scampered away, actually running up to Matthew to show him something. The woman came closer, recognized him, and froze. "Honey, don't bother him. Sorry about that," she said, quietly. Matthew decided to seize this chance after a polite joke about the little girl. He introduced himself and asked if she remembered that incident with Olivia. The moment she realized who he was, the husband, her face went pale. "So you really don't know?" she whispered. "No." "What?" Matthew replied, bracing himself. Her name was Samantha, and she told him about her recent heartbreak, how she'd caught her husband Ethan cheating, then found pictures on his phone revealing his lover's identity. "Your wife's name is Olivia, right? She works in an office on Gardner Street?" Samantha asked. "Yes. But are you sure you're not mixing something up?" Matthew asked, though. Deep down he was, recalling Olivia's late nights, her shifting mood. "If you don't believe me, rummage through her underwear drawer." Samantha said bluntly, "I found a pair of blue lace panties in Ethan's car. I never gave them back to her." "Wait, what?" Matthew stammered. "You heard me. If you check, you might find she only has the matching blue bra left. The bottom she lost in my husband's car." Samantha gave a sad, ironic smile. Stunned, Matthew exchanged numbers with her, thanked her, and drove home in a daze. The second he got inside, he went straight to the dresser where Olivia kept her lingerie. He remembered her once teasing him in a sexy blue lace set. Sure enough, the bra was there, but the matching panties were missing. "What are you doing, Matt?" came Olivia's startled voice. Behind him, looking for something. "Where are those blue lace panties of yours?" Why do you need to know?" she asked, frowning. "I'm curious whether they ended up with Ethan or if they're still." Here Matthew's voice dripped sarcasm. For a split-second, panic flickered in Olivia's eyes, but then she tried to pretend he was talking nonsense. At that moment, Matthew's phone buzzed. It was a text from Samantha reading, "If you still don't believe me, here's more proof," followed by photographs of Olivia hugging some man in a way that left no doubt about their relationship. Matthew held the phone out so she could see. "Explain this," he said coldly. Olivia froze. "It's not what it looks like," she babbled, but it was no use. So that very night, Matthew kicked her out. The apartment was his anyway, and he had zero interest in staying with a cheating wife who'd strung him along like that. She tried to make excuses, but he wasn't interested. Soon after he filed for divorce, he later learned that after Samantha confronted her own husband about his affair, Ethan had a meltdown and broke it off with Olivia. That explained why Olivia suddenly stopped coming home late and sank into a sullen mood. As for Matthew, he was bitter that he'd wasted so much time with someone so careless about his feelings, but he didn't let it destroy him. Eventually, he found a new partner who became a devoted wife and gave him the child he'd always wanted. Olivia, on the other hand, ended up alone. She faced a mountain of personal and professional difficulties. Fate was showing her in vivid colors what happens if you ruin others' lives for the sake of fleeting desires.